Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another raid video. Assassin's Creed's here, and I want to look at all of the characters. Outside of Ezio, we already did a video on him. Let's start with Basim. Now, he is going to be in the Assassin's Creed collaboration. This one is in the Sacred Order, and so we also do have a couple of the Assassin passives here that we've seen on characters like Ezio before, like everything is permitted, doing a bonus damage when an enemy's HP drops below 25%. After receiving any additional damage from an assassin, they're going to take additional damage on top of that, equal to Basim's attack as well. So if you have a team of assassins, they can all kind of like group up and finish somebody off if you have them all built as like DPS type characters, which is pretty nice. The easiest thing for you to do is support the channel by checking out the link in the description below. You're gonna get a free legendary champion as well as up to $200 worth of free goodies. And don't forget, up to 3 awesome epics as you level up inside of Raid. And be sure to use the code Desert Queen to get access to your new free legendary champion in the form of Tahana Rock. As always, this helps the channel out so much, guys, so be sure to check that description down in the link below and join me in Raid today. On top of that, though, we also have the Masterful Thief passive for Basim as well, which is going to allow you to steal random buffs as this champion is attacked. You can't steal polymorph, apparently, obviously. But on top of that, though, in addition to stealing the buffs, Basim's going to ignore 25% of the target's resistance when using skills if they are under Veil or Perfect Veil, which is something that we've seen not only from the Assassin's Creed collab characters, but some of the free characters like the Alien collaboration event as well. Veil and Perfect Veil are very awesome when using them on your DPS focused sort of like stealthy type characters to keep them survivable in both PvE as well as PvP. Now, what sort of unique things is Basim going to be doing here? His go-to spam A1 skill here is going to attack an enemy 2 times, and then each hit has a 50% chance to put a weaken debuff on the enemy for 2 turns. If you don't know what weaken is, it's like a damage increased taken debuff. Now, if they are under a Veil or Perfect Veil, Basim is going to increase this chance to 100%. So this is a very nice way to just stack additional damage on top of the traditional attack buffs, defense breaks, things of that nature. In addition to that, you're going to be able to get a debuff spread effect on top of that 50% base chance, and it will take a random debuff from that target and place it on all enemies here. If this champion is under Veil or Perfect Veil, it increases it to 100%. So since this attacks 2 times, if you're under Veil or Perfect Veil, your first attack is going to put weaken on them, and then the second hit is gonna be like, hey, I have debuff spread, let's spread that weaken to everyone else. So it is pretty cool. I like this a lot. In addition to that as well, your first attack can also spread a different debuff. Maybe you have defense break on somebody as well, single target, spread the defense break, second hit, spread the defense break and the weaken, which is very nice. We like to see that. Up in smoke, the A2 here attacks all enemies. It's going to ignore 15% defense of each of the targets, and it'll also boost that defense, ignoring up to 30% if they're under Veil or Perfect Veil with Basim. So this is just like a nice little AoE wave clear. This can go down to like a 3-turn cooldown here, and on top of that, it has a very important ability here of placing block active skills for 2 turns, which is good on its own, but on top of that, it has the ability to supersede the block debuffs buff if you're under Veil or Perfect Veil yourself, which is crazy. So the enemy can try to counter against debuffs, and you can still say, no, your skills are turned off as long as under Veil or Perfect Veil. So there are a lot of Veil and Perfect Veil things so far. How are we going to get him under Veil or Perfect Veil? We have the wings here, the A3 skill. It's going to attack an enemy. It's going to do bonus damage for every buff and debuff on Basim, as well as 5% more damage for every buff and debuff on the enemy target as well. And this stacks up to 100% extra damage bonus, and it also will put Perfect Veil on Basim for 3 turns and then grant you an extra turn, and you can get this down to a 4-turn cooldown. So Basim himself basically has the ability to put Perfect Veil on himself for 3 out of 4 turns, assuming the enemy doesn't strip it off you, take you out of Perfect Veil yourself. But he looks like he's going to be pretty cool to play with here. Early reviews coming in seem like he's just all around like great, you know, 5s and 4s across the board. It looks like a great place to be for Basim. So if you get access to him, he's cool. He's not like my favorite Assassin's Creed character. I think that's always going to go to probably Ezio, honestly, not just in Raid, but just in general. I mean, you got Ezio and Altair. I mean, that's just who I am, guys, for sure. But I do like this skill set in Raid nonetheless. Now, in the Barbarians factions, we are going to have Bayek here, A1 the strike, the spammable skill. This is going to put leech on an enemy so you can absorb some damage off of that. And it's also going to fill Bayek's turn meter by 20% as well. And as you can see here, Bayek's going to be more of a defense scaling character. So outside of the other Assassin's Creed collab characters we've seen that are, well, a big damage, big debuffs, we're going to have a mix of defensive damage as well as sustain and survivability here with Bayek, it looks like. We also have the A2 here, the Desert Zephyr, puts a decrease accuracy debuff and a decrease resistance debuff on the enemy for 2 turns, and also is going to provoke them. So it's going to make it easier for your other characters as well as Bayek himself to land debuffs and also allow you to maybe in a lot of times like evade with that decreased accuracy debuff on your team as well, allowing you to just resist what the enemy is trying to do to you. But this provoke debuff is AoE for all enemies for 1 turn, and if they're under 3 or more debuffs, it becomes a 2-turn debuff. And as you can see, accuracy down, resistance down, and provoke is already 3 debuffs. So unless one of these gets resisted for you, this should be an AoE 2-turn debuff on a 3-turn cooldown once you put a little bit of talent love into Bayek's A2. His A3 is the prayer, and this is going to be a 6-turn cooldown that goes down to a 4-turn cooldown if you invest into it, and it's going to give you an increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is going to help you land those very important debuffs. And the Assassin's Creed collab comes in once again with Perfect Veil for yourself, okay? It also gives you a 60% defense buff on all of your allies except for Bayek as well, but then it's going to give you a 3-turn defense buff at 60% for Bayek, and this is because, well, he's going to take an extra turn off of this. That's why this is worded a little bit weird there. Basically, you're going to get an AoE team-wide 2-turn defense buff for everybody. You're just going to take an extra turn here. And also do note that because this goes down to a 4-turn cooldown and it grants you an extra turn, it's basically a 3-turn cooldown, not a 4-turn cooldown. So you only have like 1 turn downtime on all of these buffs for your team, which is great there. The passives here are slightly different than some of the other ones we've seen for the Assassin's Creed collab characters. This is going to be Siwa's Pride passive. This champion and their allies cannot receive critical hits from enemies whose accuracy is equal to or lower than their own accuracy. So we were talking about this on some of his A2 here with the accuracy debuff, being like, how is this going to make you resist stuff even more? It's because of this passive. We like that. You can't get crit. That's a lot of damage mitigation in both PvE as well as PvP, assuming you can meet this requirement, which his whole kit allows him to do with the buffs and debuffs that he's applying so far. His other passive here comes back Assassin's Creed style. We have everything is permitted. And then last but not least is his aura, which gives all allies accuracy increased by 70 in all battles. So if you're looking for a little bit of a disruptor, I can't get crit, I'm gonna help my team do a bunch of stuff. If you have access to Bayek, you're gonna find some pretty nice stuff to do with him, especially if you want that leech provoke sort of tank down playstyle in the different types of content that you are doing. Now, I know a lot of players out there be like, you didn't talk about how much you like Edward Kenway do Black Flags, the craziest out there. Let's talk about Edward. I do like it. He's just, you know what, from a character, he's not Ezio, he's not Altair, okay? It's fine. All right, we're moving on. Now the A1 here, Privateer Blitz, attacks an enemy 3 times. Each has a 75% chance of decreasing their turn meter by 15% each hit. So we're turn stealing a lot. Also on top of that though, it goes up to 25% if that attack is critical. And if you're under Veil or Perfect Veil, the effect cannot be resisted, which is absolutely banana sandwich. And if you invest into this level 1 A1 talent, you get that 75% all the way up to a 100%. So assuming you're under Veil or Perfect Veil, this is 3 25% turn meter pushbacks all on one spammable A1 skill. This is absolutely insane. Boss lane, and if you're not immune to this effect, you're doing some good stuff out there with the Privateer Blitz. Also, keep in mind, like, yeah, a lot of the Assassin's Creed characters put Veil and Perfect Veil on themselves, but there's other non-collab characters that can put the Veil and Perfect Veil back on your Assassin's Creed collab characters to make an effect like this 100% uptime, which is absolutely absurd. We have the A2 here, Fan the Hammer, attacks all enemies 2 times. First hit's gonna steal all buffs and decreases each enemy's turn meter back by 20%. If you're under Veil or Perfect Veil, it can't be resisted once again. The second hit has a chance to put sleep on them, and it also will ignore any block debuffs buffs if the attack is critical, and it can't be resisted if you're under Veil or Perfect Veil. Say what you want, the block debuff buff is incredibly powerful, and the fact that there are so many different Assassin's Creed collab characters that can ignore it is a little wild to me. Now, the A3 here is between the eyes here, attacks one enemy champion before attacking, puts a Perfect Veil buff on the champion as well as any other assassins on the team for 2 turns. So this one is going to be an upside slash downside thing, but let's get through the skill here. We'll ignore shield, stone skin, and block damage buffs as well, and we'll put block revive debuff if the target is killed. So if you want someone out of there, you have in between the eyes. And the one side that I want to say upside downside for this is it is a 5-turn cooldown. You have to invest into it all the way down to make it a 3-turn cooldown, and it's going to give him his way of putting Perfect Veil on. Now, unlike the other characters we've talked about so far, it doesn't have extra turn on it, so you're not doing something crazy like, oh, in between the eyes, give myself Perfect Veil, and then start spamming out Privateer Blitz, pushing everyone back, all this other cool stuff. But the upside is that it is for all of the other assassins, and the ones we've looked at so far, and the ones we'll be looking at as we finish this video, they all have like a turn or 2 downtime on when they're in Perfect Veil or not. And Edward, if you have him in conjunction with Ezio or any of the other characters you may be able to piece together that rely on having some of the veils, he can fill in that downtime for you. On the other hand too, well, this is a way for him to coordinate with non-raid characters where you just want to use Edward Kenway for his crazy pushback over and over and over, where someone else can put Veil and Perfect Veil on Edward, and then he will be able to put it back up for himself, and potentially in some circumstances, depending on what your team is, have a 100% uptime on that Perfect Veil and just spam out, you know, knockbacks, sleeps, all this other stuff, ignoring resistance and pushing enemies back continuously with Privateer Blitz. His passive here, everything is permitted. We see it one more time. And then a brand new one here is Keel Haul. Each hit inflicted by this champion has a 50% chance of putting an ensnare debuff on the target for 2 turns. Whenever this champion kills an enemy, if they have that ensnare debuff on all other enemies, it's going to put it on them at 100% proc rate and decrease their turn meter rate by 20% as well. And it also ignores resistance if he happens to be under a Veil effect at that time. And he's also going to do 20% more damage against targets with the ensnare debuff. He does seem a little bit more tame in a lot of ways compared to some of the other Assassin's Creed collab characters we've seen so far. Block debuffs being ignored and being able to put sleep on there is actually incredibly strong for just hard crowd control in an AoE situation. But this A1 being able to just multi-hit, push things back, depending on what sort of team you can build around him for PvE, seems like it's going to be pretty cool out there. And you can see just how high ranking he is actually just like the hidden lethal threat. He's just so good at what he does. He doesn't look like he's anything giga crack going to carry my entire account, but I think he has the potential of doing just that for you. Last but definitely not least, we have the brand new faction, the Argonauts. In the video for the trailer for the Assassin's Creed collab, said that this won't be the only character in the Argonauts for long. This is going to be Cassandra, and she's going to be the final raid collab character we're talking about today. Yes, take that pose. Boom. All right, the A1 here, West Wind Rush, attacks one enemy 3 times, attacks one enemy 6 times instead if she's under 50% HP. And on top of that, each hit decreases their turn meter by 7.5%. It increases Cassandra's by 7.5%. It cannot be resisted if you're under Veil or Perfect Veil. So just like we talked about with our boy Edward Kenway, it's not as much of a pushback all of the time, where Edward you can get to like 75% pretty reasonably, build your team around it. This one is going to be, you know, between 3 to 6 hits of 7.5%, but it also pushes herself up as well, which is kind of insane because you're going to have like a little bit of, I don't want you to take a turn, I'm going to start taking more turns than you, and then you just keep attacking the same person. Think of like a boss or something. You can kind of just get that West Wind Rush ready to rock and roll. You are going to have to try to keep her HP 50% or below if you want those 6 hits on this A1 though. The A2 here is going to be Spear of Leonidas. It's going to be a 4-turn cooldown. You can reduce it down to a 3-turn cooldown. It's going to attack an enemy, give them a 60% defense break debuff, and an HP burn debuff as well for 3 turns. Can't be resisted if you're under a Veil effect, and it will also stun all enemies for 1 turn if the damage dealt by the skill is 50% or more of the target's max HP, and this also can't be resisted if you're under a Veil or Perfect Veil effect. Now, this is going to be single target defense and HP burn, but we just talked about a character who can spread debuffs to everybody unresisted. Seems like a pretty good combo. I think they know what they're doing. Then we have Ezio's Blessing here. The A3 6-turn cooldown can be reduced down to a 4-turn cooldown, removes all debuffs from this champion, heals them for 50% of their max HP, and then feels their turn meter by 50% as well. It's also going to give you a 50% attack buff, a 15% shatter buff, and a 30% speed increase buff. On top of that, it has a passive effect that's going to prevent Cassandra from dying and keeps them alive at 1 HP if they are under an increased attack buff, shatter buff, and increased speed buff as well. So if you gain access to Cassandra taking her turn, you use this. As long as you have these buffs, she literally cannot die, which is the combo with her A1, which is pretty nice. You're gonna have speed buff, attack buff, shatter buff. You're going to be able to be under that 50% HP threshold, and you're gonna be pushing the enemy back a lot, pushing yourself up a lot, and you still just cannot die as long as you have these buffs. And it gives you the ability to become Captain Insano, basically. The downside here is that they are going to be attached to a 4-turn cooldown, even if you invest into this skill, and they only last 2 turns. So she's gonna have a very high power moment and then be very, very fragile, and you're gonna have to kind of build your team around that. But the potential of you being able to do crazy things with that is very nice, and it is very strong. We have the everything is permitted passive once again, and then we have the new one, the Blood of Sparta. Whenever this champion attacks an enemy, increase this champion's attack by an amount equal to 50% of the target's defense. Whenever an enemy attacks this champion, increase this champion's defense by an amount equivalent to 50% of the attacker's attack. So you can use this to do more damage, obviously, but also it's going to pair quite nicely with getting below that 50%, threshold without like dying on those turns where you just do not have all of the buffs up. It's going to help you there a little bit, but it's, not the craziest thing in her kit. I really like the A1, 2, and 3 synergy. Now, for her aura, she's gonna have a 19% speed aura buff for everyone in your team as well. Out of all of the Assassin's Creed characters, she is the one that is like the least driven to be in Veil and Perfect Veil at all times, because really, she's got a couple of things, but it's really this. If you can put her in Veil and Perfect Veil some other way, she is going to be able to do quite substantial work with her A1, 2, 3 combo for you. She's just gonna need a little bit of help, more so than some of the other AC collab characters do. Lucky for us though, there's a lot of great 4-star raid characters and supports that can put either of those Veil buffs up for you. And all that's well and said and good. I like it a lot. The problem with this though is that if you compare Cassandra to who we talked about earlier, right, with the 75% pushback, self-sufficient Veil, self-sufficient Perfect Veil, nearly just like 1 or 0, turn downtime on having her kit all the way online. She doesn't really have that in comparison to some of the other characters. She's gonna have 2 turn downtime. She needs to be under specific HP thresholds, stuff that's kind of out of your control a lot of the times there. And so you can see there's 600 reviews here, and people aren't saying she's awful. It's just like compared to some of the other ones, it's just like, why would I use this when I can use, Bayek or Edward Kenway or Basim or Ezio a lot of the time. So she's having a little bit of a rough go of it. I think if you kind of work on her a little bit, you could do it. It's really the fact that she needs to have the shatter buff on top of attack and increased speed for this I can't die passive to really come online. And there's just not a lot of like super easy ways to just give shatter buff to someone continuously in raid quite yet. Let me know what you think about it down below. If you want to help out the channel, make sure you check out the description, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.